So on my watch, it just turned 10 after 10 UTC. So for the sake of keeping our time and getting as much information and exchange in as possible, I would say we start. I see that there's still people coming in, and our panelists are also at the moment not complete, but I will hope people will join us. Please excuse if we have to improvise a bit. This is all a challenge, as you know, for people to join across time zones and with the setup that we're in, but I hope this will all work well. So once again, welcome to workshop 231. We are talking about youth and sustainability, creating change through collaboration. My name is Elisabeth Schauermann, and I'm with the German Informatics Society. This year, I coordinated the Youth for Digital Sustainability program, on which I will elaborate in a second. But before I do so, please let me introduce my co-organizers of this session, Emilia Zalewska from the Youth IGF Poland, and she's also with Legal Tech Polska. Emilia, if you want to wave into the camera, now is the time to do so. And my second co-organizer is Jenna Fang, who is with Net Mission Asia. Jenna, if you're there, wonderful, perfect. Emilia and Jenna will also moderate the chat and the Q&A. So if you have any inputs and questions, those are the two who will get back to you. In the next 60 minutes, we want to explore different angles on how we can work together towards an effective multi-stakeholder collaboration for digital sustainability and get an understanding of what young people specifically can do and should do in order to foster the discourse. The premise of this discussion and this question is that we have seen in the past few years, especially, it has been young people who have left a mark and really opened our eyes to the importance of climate action and environmental justice. So this is where I kind of want to, or where we thought we could marry the environmental justice initiatives, ideas, and the network and the expertise that we have in the internet governance spheres, now that environment is one of the main tracks of the IGF. This was also the rationale kind of for setting up the Youth for Digital Sustainability program this year. We wanted to extend this momentum and really give tangible input to the internet governance sphere on digital sustainability. Last year, the German Informatics Society organized the Youth IGF Summit in Berlin, and we saw that sustainability and different aspects of sustainability were really something that young people were very interested in and concerned with, and that they had a lot of expertise on. And so this year, 50 young experts from all world regions have collaborated across 12 time zones, 32 countries, and came up with 12 recommendations for a more sustainable internet. These recommendations also cover several aspects. They touch upon environmental sustainability, but also social and economic aspects, and also give input to the internet governance aspect of it. I will link to the recommendations in the chat now. So if you want to have a look at them and let us know what you think, and maybe have them as an input for your questions and statements later, you can do so now. Soon you will also be able to find background papers on all of the messages on our website via igf.de, and they will give a little more context to the recommendations. In today's session, though, we will be able to hear from several people who were involved in drafting the sessions, but also get outside expertise and perspectives in, and we hopefully hear from you too, our participants. I'm happy to introduce our speakers, although I am not sure if everyone is already here, but by planned order of appearance, it is Raphael Reimann, Rasmus Andresen, Edmond Chong, Josepha Ticho, and Lily Botsoy. We will hear from all of those. And one thing I want to address is why we have a diverse thematic and regional lineup, so to speak. We are now definitely lacking a gender diversity on the panel. Unfortunately, we had some unavailabilities, and one of our non-male speakers has fallen sick. She called me earlier, and she's now being tested for COVID-19, so I hope she will be better very soon. And we as moderators will try to kind of balance this out with a focus on more gender diversity with the interaction from the floor. So yeah, with that, no, one more thing. We are also interested in what your background is. So you could let us know what your affiliation is, what the initiative is that you're with. Maybe this has also to do with digital sustainability or the track environment. So this would be very interesting to us. You have more time to fill out this questionnaire or give your input. The panelists' input shall be 5 minutes maximum. So I ask you, my dear speakers, to respect the time count. And participants, you can always post your questions to the Q&A and interact in the chat, and we will have an opportunity to exchange on your inputs later on. Our first input comes from Raphael Reimann, who is one of the working group members of the group Greening the Internet of the Youth for Digital Sustainability program. And he's also an organizer of Fridays for Future initiatives in Germany. So he could really give us some insight, and he will give us some insight on how environmental advocacy and youth work intersect and what we can learn from Fridays for Future and how we can bring that to the internet governance sphere. So Raphael, I would like you to take the floor and elaborate a bit on your work and the lessons learned, so to speak.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. My name is Raphael Reimann. As Elizabeth already said, I am 20 years old. I'm a student from Germany. I worked on the Youth for Digital Sustainability program on the last couple of weeks. And I'm also a Fridays for Future organizer in Germany. And in my input, I want to give some insight into how the climate movement and the internet governance movement are connected, and what the internet governance movement, especially because I am newer to the internet governance movement than I am to the climate movement, what the internet governance movement and especially the youth part of it can learn from other youth movements such as Fridays for Future. So I want to show 3 ways the movements are similar and where they can learn from each other. So I think one big achievement that Fridays for Future movement has done is moving a very important topic, which in the Fridays for Future case is climate change, from a marginalized expert group into the public, into the mass media, to be discussed in the wider public. So the first learning I would take from that for the internet governance space is that the internet governance space should take the respective internet governance topics, find a language that is accessible to everyone, which is also something we have discussed in the Youth for Digital Sustainability program. And we have put some insight in our background papers if you are interested to read them. So the space should take a language that is accessible to everyone, not just tech-savvy people or political decision makers, but those people that are essentially affected by the internet and data regulation in the end. So the end users, if you will. So the internet governance community has to find a way to frame their topics, such as data security, accessibility of the internet, the ethics of artificial intelligence, or digital privacy, so that each and every one of us understands how these developments will affect our day-to-day lives and our society as a whole. So the second learning for me is that because of the course of technological development and whether it is good or bad is often decided by the regulation, which restricts the technological development. We have to have experts in the field explain the consequences of certain pieces of regulation to the public, and then have a big grassroots movement which amplifies those expert voices. So to give an example with the climate movement and Fridays for Future, what we have essentially done is amplifying the voices of the scientific and expert communities, which were already there. We haven't made up any news. So the scientific consensus on climate change was already there, but we took that consensus and the scientific voices that were calling for actions against climate change for decades now, but were not heard by the media, to the public, and made it so that politicians and the public in general heard about what the scientific community had to say about climate change and actions that has to be taken. So the internet governance community too has to find a way to amplify those voices. Yes, so another thing which is really important for me is also in the Youth for Digital Sustainability program. I have seen what great of an impact it has if you have a diverse group of people discussing such a global topic that has implications for everyone. So just to connect it to the Fridays for Future movement, because that is where I am from. We at Fridays for Future are a global movement, but we still are very European centric, and we are dominated mostly by white people, which is not good, and we are aware of that, but it is a reality we have to face, and we then have to take some mechanisms to actively work against that non-diversity within such a movement. So I think it is important for the internet governance movement that it actively works towards amplifying less privileged voices, and also has mechanisms to ensure that it gives a space for people from from different backgrounds to ensure that this that is not as Eurocentric as we have had in the past. And I think that is not only a question of justice, of social justice, but also the different kinds of views on the same topic can be so impactful, which I have also felt in this program over the last couple of weeks, that it is a really positive impact just to have people from different kinds of backgrounds instead of just white men trying to have regulations governing the world or the internet. So yeah, those were my 3 inputs, connecting the climate change movement and the internet governance movement, especially on the youth side.
Thank you very much, Rafael. I hope we can elaborate on some of those mechanisms that we can maybe think towards in the future, and how we can extend what we've seen this year working very well. But next up, I would like to ask Rasmus Andresen to take the floor. Rasmus is a member of the European Parliament for the Green Party, and he has been engaged in politics from a very young age. So there's also knowledge on how we can shape policies as young people from his side. We are very happy to have you, Rasmus, as the number of parliamentarians in internet governance spaces is only rising a bit over the past years. And from my perspective, and I think from a lot of people, point of view, it is crucial for effective digital collaboration to have you and other parliamentarians as part of these discussions. So I would like to get your input and your insight on what the ideal role and responsibility of parliamentarians could be in a common effort for more digital sustainability. Are there any good practices that you can refer to? And if you have time in your 5 minutes, maybe you can also touch upon what we have heard from Raphael in terms of what we can learn from youth initiatives specifically on this topic.
Yes, first of all, thanks to you, Elisabeth, and to all the others for inviting and participating in this discussion. I think it's the right moment to do so. I had some technical problems, so I didn't hear everything Raphael said. So, but I guess there will be possibilities also to discuss our remarks afterwards, and then maybe I can jump in there and comment also a bit later. But first of all, I would like to say that the topic you have chosen to build a sustainable digital sector is a quite important one. We had last week in the Industry and Research Committee in the European Parliament a debate with the Commissioner, Vice President of the European Commission, Margrethe Vestager, about different digital topics. And I asked her also a question about what kind of measures the European Commission would like to take to build a sustainable digital sector. You know that both fighting climate change and making Europe digital sovereign are priorities of the new European Commission. And of course, they also would like to link these different topics together. As it is right now, we can see that especially under COVID, the share of CO2 emissions coming from the digital sector is much higher than, for example, coming from aviation. And even in other parts, the CO2 share is reduced. But for the digital sector, you can see that there is a lot of problems related to that. The share of CO2 emissions for the digital sector will rise in the next year. So there is a lot to do, and my feeling is that even there are some ideas already in the political discussion, but it's not like you have a plan for how to handle it, like you have a plan, for example, to handle the building sector or mobility. There maybe it's more a question of to do what we know we need to do. But on the digital part, there are still a lot of elements where I guess everybody agrees on how important this is, but nobody has a very strong plan for making the digital sector more sustainable. The EU Commission had set the goal of making the digital sector and especially the data center climate neutral by 2030, because we know that one of the most important issues there is how to handle the situation related to the data and the data center, because we know that they need a lot of electricity. So this is a really important topic, but there are others as well. And for me, it's a combination of regulation where we need to ensure that, for example, companies are doing what they need to do so that we can build a sustainable digital sector. But on the other side, also because we are not there, that we are having every kind of good solution already now, we also need a lot of innovation. And that means for me that we need also to invest in research, that we need to come up with new innovative solutions where we also can have young startups, for example, working on these kind of solutions. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's good that you have chosen, or that you are discussing this, because I mean, it's also up to the young generation to ensure that this is that this will happen. And this means that we first of all, need to raise our voices, like Fridays for Future is doing on a lot of different issues when it comes to global warming. And on the other side, we also can start, we also need to transform the digital sector. And for this, also innovative solutions, the work of researchers, but also from startups would help a lot, because we can't wait on Google, Amazon, and others handling these kind of problems. I would like to mention one more thing. As Greens, I'm a member of the Green Party and the Green Group in the European Parliament. We are organizing some events about that. So we will have a big congress next week. We are starting a campaign called Digital for the Planet campaign, where we actually are addressing a lot of these issues, and where we want to discuss these kind of solutions with experts coming from different areas. And there I also would like to invite you. We are also trying to start some research projects, some studies with some universities about these kinds of issues. And there I think we have a lot in common. And yeah, we should start with the discussion today, but we should continue with it in the upcoming weeks and months.
Definitely. Thank you, Rasmus, for your insights. And maybe we can share later some links to the campaign and what the Greens are planning, because with this group, there has been a lot of, energy and thinking that went into this topic specifically of digital sustainability. So I hope we can find a way to follow up there. I also liked how you kind of gave us this trifecta of action that needs to be taken: regulation on the one side, then innovation, and also advocacy and campaigning, awareness raising. With this, and also because it was mentioned by Raphael, I would like to give the floor now to Josephat, because we have now talked about the European and EU realm, but I think we need to also further the discussion, go a bit beyond our Eurocentric view on digital sustainability. So Josephat is our next speaker. He wears many hats. He has been part of the Youth for Digital Sustainability Working Group on Internet for Social Cohesion, and he is the Vice President of the Internet Society chapter in Namibia. And Josephat, I would like to hear from you in a few minutes how you can see this discourse translated into Namibia, and if you are comfortable to speak on other African countries and regions as well, how we can do that. And as you have a background as an actor and you have been working with art, maybe you can also tell us a bit more about that part of your advocacy and your capacity building.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for the opportunity, and good afternoon to everybody. As Elizabeth has alluded, my name is Josephat, and I'm the Vice President of the Internet Society Namibia chapter. And just to give a bit of a background about Namibia is that, Namibia is a country, and through the government, we have been hosting different types of discussion and dialogue about bridging the digital gap in the country. This has also been alluded into different strategies and plans within the country, of where one of them is the National Development Plan of Namibia, which also encompasses a component on how we as a country can leverage and try to really make technology as advanced as possible. Our government also, through our current president, has come up with a 5-year strategy, which is called the Harambee Prosperity Plan. And that also touches on some of the key indicators and some of the key issues that we as a country needs to go in terms of digital and also in terms of technology. And discussion has also been there through the Namibian ICT Summit, as well as also the Namibian Internet Governance Forum, on the importance really of digital sustainability and how we as a country can work and leverage on that. But however, to be quite frank, and I think it was also alluded by the previous speaker, was that, there is not much of strategies and not much of information on how we as a country or how we as a world can also try to really leverage on this and have clear strategies and way ahead to address these. Specifically in Namibia, some of the barriers that we have been having or that we currently have also is that of the fact of that even though we have as much ideas and then see the importance of really having digital transformation in a country, We unfortunately also do not have a digital strategy or digital plan in Namibia. And also, in terms of moving digitally, there are other components that we also need to encompass and that we also need to think about. And these components also need to have some sort of policy and bills to sort of guide and protect us. And in Namibia, other factors that has also been hindering this is the fact of that as a country, we do not have the data protection bill, which makes it quite difficult for an individual to sort of like protect your data online. We also do not have the cybersecurity bill. We also do not have other components such as the access to information law also. So these are some of the things that we are also struggling with as a country, because how do we move digitally if we do not have the access to information law? How do we move digitally if we do not have the data protection bill and so forth? Moving into the continental wise is that through the African Union, we came up, or as Africa as a continent, there are bills or there are some sort of information that sort of like guides or have indicated some key strategies and areas on how we can move as a continent. And some of this is the Agenda 2063 plan, where by the year 2063, of which we as young people foresee it as way too long to go. There are some clear indications around that of where they've been trying to really see how can Africa become self-sustainable in terms of digitally also. And then number 4 of one of the points on the Agenda 2063 is that we aim to have a e-University Talk, which aims to accelerate development of human capital, science, technology, and innovation through increasing access to tertiary and continuing education in Africa. The Pan-African e-University also aims on working on that. And some of the key indicators or some of the key action plan that came around that was, first of all, of creating of an annual consultative platform for policy dialogue. And the aim around this was really to bring together once a year the African political leaders, the private sectors, academia, civil society, women, youth, media, as well as community and faith leaders to discuss development and constraint, as well as measures to be taken to realize the Agenda 2063. And I think these are some of the things that where digital transformation should really be encompasses in and also to be discussed in. Moving also in terms of we or me as a performing artist, besides my passion for technology and engaging on issues of technology, is also the fact of that art plays a crucial and very important role in conveying information. A lot of people see art as a tool to really try to engage on, to really try to convey the message that is being through poetry, where you talk about real issues of digitalization in poetry in a language that a person can be able to relate to emotionally, intellectually, and so forth. Performing arts also plays a crucial role, especially here in Namibia, because it is one of the elements that is being used to sort of like convey the message. First of all, we try to convey in our own dialect languages, because not everybody is conversant in English and so forth. So how do we then convey real critical issues about real issues in continent, be it COVID-19, be it digitalization, in a performing art manner, so that people can not only be entertained, but also be educated at the same time. And I think this is also one of the elements that has been working quite clearly in terms of the young people, specifically in Namibia, because as young people, we are more accustomed to seeing visual in terms of reading books. You know, when you look at your TikToks, when you look at your Pinterest, and when you look at all of these other social media platforms, you see that there is an element of art associated around it. And I, as a performing artist in Namibia, have also been trying to really use my art in terms of poetry, in terms of performing art, to try and convey information. And I think that art should be really one of the components that we need to try and work around to convey information, and also to be included in such platform, in such initiative of digital sustainability and so forth, so that we can also try to see on what are the different avenues that we should work around and use in conveying, as well as also having a digital strategy moving forward, not only in Namibia, but globally as well. So I think for now, we'll stop here and we can engage further.
Thank you, Josephat. And you know, the notion that we need to effectively and accessibly communicate and convey information on the climate crisis and environmental issues has also been one of the recommendations of the Youth for Digital Sustainability Working Group, Greening the Internet, because as also Raphael has mentioned and Rasmus has touched upon, the information output is one important aspect of it. Rasmus has to leave soon, so I would like to maybe do a quick round, and I would like to go back on one question or one idea maybe that has also came out of our discussions with representatives of the European Commission, is that there have been steps taken by the EU. For example, the export of e-waste has been banned. So Rasmus, can you maybe, with what we have heard from Josephat, the agenda that has been discussed in a multi-stakeholder way in Africa, albeit not being very ambitious in terms of the time frame, where do you see opportunities for interregional exchange and policy development in terms of digital sustainability?
You mean in a global context?
Yes.
So between the EU and other parts of the world? Or?
Yes, if you can elaborate, it would be great.
Yes, okay. I mean, for me, there are two things. First of all, we need to know which way we would, as the European Union, we want to go. And then, of course, there are a lot of elements, like you mentioned, e-waste, and others on the perspective of a circular economy, which we know that there will be some action, and there have been some strategies already, which also, from my perspective, always have to include a global perspective. And I mean, you can't address these kind of questions without having a global perspective. So this is obvious. And then, of course, and there I think also the European Union should be better, is that we need to cooperate and do it together. So we, as European Union, we shouldn't just have it in mind what it means for the world, but we need to develop that with other parts of the world, so that we have stakeholders like you have here now, not just within the EU, but coming from all over the world. We need to address also different kinds of civil society, because we know that maybe in some countries we are collaborating with, should collaborate with, maybe their civil society is not included in the discussions like we would like to see them included. And of course, we also need to address the industry. Not in a way that I think we should do what the industry wants, but we need to ensure that the industry is part of the discussion, because without the industry and also global role and global responsibility the industry has, we won't solve the problems. Let's say it like that. And there, for me, next year will be key, because from the perspective of the European Union, we have negotiated our budget in the last weeks. We are having a lot of also possibilities to spend some money on fighting global warming, but also on the digital sector for the upcoming years. And now we need to specify it much more, and this is what will happen in the next months, basically, where the member states and the Commission and the Parliament, of course, will do the work. And there we need to come up with, first of all, also maybe formats where we can develop on that together, and where there also is space for some innovative solutions, so that we can ensure that we are doing something now where we know that we need to do that, or where we can agree on that we should do that, but we also need to have some space left for innovative solutions. And yes, of course, we need to do this together with other parts of the world, because we know that the way we are handling the digitalization has a big effect on many parts of the world. and maybe now there is also a chance for it. I'm also thinking a bit about the political situation in the US, where we at least will have an administration in the future which is ready also to have some international collaboration, which doesn't mean that we are agreeing with them on everything, but still there is a possibility again to discuss it, and that's, I think, also very important.
Thank you, Rasmus. And I'm totally with you when we are talking about maybe we need to change things up a bit, and the way of finding solutions has to be in an innovative way so that we can find innovative solutions. And the multi-stakeholder exchange that is really built into the Internet Governance Force with civil society and the private sector and governments coming together could maybe foster some exchange on that. So thank you very much.
There is a question in the Q&A. I don't know, should I write it? Should I answer in written, or should I answer it
now? Maybe you can answer it in written, because it is a specific question on the EU, and
it's okay. I will do so.
Right, thank you very much. Because with that, I would like to go on and give the floor to Edmund Chang, who is the CEO of the .Asia organization. And Edmund, I'm hoping you can give us a bit of insight on the discourse on digital sustainability in the Asia Pacific region, and also specifically in Internet Governance Forest. This is something you're very familiar with and active in.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for having me on. Definitely a very timely and important topic. Just I guess starting off with the APR IGF, the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, we have actually this year have a particular session on sustainability, but I want to say that this is definitely a very new topic to be discussed, and many of the issues that were touched upon by other speakers are very pertinent. In terms of the session that happened at APR IGF this year. Actually, it's called the Internet's environmental impact on and an action-oriented dialogue. A lot of the discussion focused on data, not in terms of data centers, but actually collecting data. So one of the interesting things is that this is a community that would have the means and the technological means to perhaps help develop better environmental data, sensor networks, and other types of collecting more data for addressing the environmental issues. And then also touch on a very interesting topic, which is algorithms. I think different people have mentioned about AI algorithms that need to be cognizant of environmental impact when sort of decisions are being suggested, especially with AI and so on. So these are kind of interesting topics that were discussed, but and then engaging the citizen data initiatives that was brought in from Taiwan, and then also the collective action part. I'll come back, which I think is, to me, is the most important part. Is how do we have really a multi-stakeholder approach in this? But before this session, actually back in 2016, .Asia supported. We worked on a project called Agitora, which is a tiger project. That also held a session at APR IGF, which looks at a very different aspect of sustainability and the SDGs. Actually, the Agitora project was created right in 2015 when the UN adopted the SDGs, and 2016 when it was put into action. The AGI project was launched in 2016, and what we talked about at the APR IGF in 2016 is the impact of the internet on illegal wildlife trade, which is a surprising topic. And most people would be quite surprised to know that tiger consumption worldwide is actually increasing rather than decreasing because of the convenience of the internet. And that brings another type of aspect. Of course, the AGI program doesn't stop there. It's really more of a education program for kids on SDGs, and that's why the cute tiger that was adopted. But it spans not just education, but also policy, because illegal wildlife trade also requires policy address. And I guess the aspect of energy, and that's where I think personally I see more most important in terms of responding to climate change for with respect to digital sustainability, is how we power the network itself. The network has proven to be quite resilient under COVID, but the power that supports the network, a lot of parts of it might still be using pretty dirty energy, and that's an issue that we need to address. And this brings me to the last part, which is and another initiative that we have been supporting, which is OneShare.world, which it's looking at the multi-stakeholder approach for other issues. Because if you look at the pandemic that we were in, we know almost for pretty clear that it's pretty clear that the UN system or the government-only driven system just doesn't work. It just doesn't work for something that's global in nature, like climate change. Because if the countries select their leaders properly, the leaders are supposed to take the country's best interests in as the priority. So if every country takes only their country's own best interests in priority, we won't have a global agenda. We won't be able to solve climate change, and that's why I think, to me, really the global multi-stakeholder approach can make an impact, and hopefully, starting the conversation here is the right step towards the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmund. It's really fascinating to see how thing that here in my personal sustainability discourse doesn't come up a lot, which is wildlife trade and illegal destruction of wildlife is fostered through the internet also. So thank you for giving us this insight. As looking on the time, I would now ask our next and last speaker in the lineup, Lily Botsoy, to take the floor, who has graciously accepted very last minute to join us to give us an out of an all-male panel, which I touched upon earlier. So Lily also is very active on different spheres, wears many hats. Inter alia, she is one of our Youth for Digital Sustainability working group members, also the organizer of the Youth IGF Ghana, and has been the youth voice in the main session on environment during the IGF. So the perspective I would like to get from you, Lily, is really how different youth initiatives in the IG space can work together and collaborate to foster this this topic. Because leading up to the IGF and the Youth IGF Summit 2020, there was a survey put out by the IGF Secretariat on what are the key themes that young people would like to see, and environment actually ranked very low with many of them. So maybe you could give us an estimation of how we can raise the interest of young people on this topic, and how we then can go forward once we have raised this interest.
Right. Hello, everyone, and apologies. I joined in late and I had to commute and find a way to make it to the session, because it's as important as we are having this now. So we know that from my part of the world, really, what we are getting to understand about the internet and the environment is that it's now moved from just the issue of usage online and trying to connect the next billion and trying to connect the unconnected in my part of the world. What's happening now is that we've seen that the internet is as important, its usage and development is as important in our offline activities, because in as much as you are reaping the benefits online, there are some things that are subtly happening that we have to be conscious of. If you want to, like from Ghana, where I'm coming from, I normally talk about the e-waste situation in a place called Agbogbloshie, and I talk about how there's so much happening that people are not aware of. And I think that the conversation, maybe from times past, have been what has been the issue and why people are not hearing the awareness you are creating. I think it has to move from making people scared that the world, something's happening to the world, to equipping them with skills on how to contribute. So if you tell a young person that, look, you're having greenhouse emissions and this is happening and that is happening, it's not far-fetched. But if you let them know that, look, as a matter of urgency, we are able to do this to change what you are seeing. So it moves from the fear, instilling fear in people to giving them hope that there's something that can be done. So you're able to let even the layperson who is not even schooled know that your activities, if changed from this angle to another one, is able to help us in a certain light. So you're telling somebody who is going scrap hunting in Ghana that, look, we know that you're getting this for a living, but are you able to use this other way, which is more sustainable, so that there can be more work for you to do and there can be more income coming in for your family that you're trying to feed by doing the activity that you're doing? So the communication has to, as a matter of urgency, move from instilling fear to where we are letting people know that there is something that can be done about the situation. So in our communications, we have to use a very varied approach so that we can reach all and sundry. You can use the infographics, you can use audio, you can use video, you can even use role plays. You can have examples that are happening elsewhere and show to people so they can understand. And in our deliberations in our Youth for Digital Sustainability program, we've come to understand that communication in greening the internet is as important as the actions that follow. So what are we communicating first off? How are people understanding it? And what is the opportunity to contribute to shaping? Now, it moves from the individualistic approach to more systemic. So you want people to know what they can do as a person, but you also reach out to the institutions that form the stakeholder groups and let them know that this is what we can do together, even as a system, so we can rewrite the story from the very grassroots and people can understand fully. Now, in having this conversation out there, we want people to be aware and continue, even in their home countries, this conversation. It shouldn't stop here on the IGF. It shouldn't stop here in our various conversations and groups. And the reason is this: in Ghana alone, the informal sector contributes to 90% of e-waste recycling, and they're not doing it the right way. So the informal people who are outside the very formal systems are those who are setting the pace for us. And we have to start from that angle to rewrite the story so people can understand that once you have the informal sector and the formal sector in solidarity and working around a certain aim, everybody is on board and you're able to understand the conversation from not just the technical bit, from not just the conference bit, but on what is on the ground. So in order to get traction, is a communication bit that is important, and moving the conversation from just the fear part about what is happening to down the action-oriented part, which says what can be done. And that's what we are seeing happen at IGF with young people doing the Youth for Digital Sustainability and all the other sessions that have happened. So the story is being changed, but it shouldn't just be in the speaking. It should go to the grassroots where the informal people are and whose activities are really relevant in our fight for sustainable internet usage. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lily. And thank you also for pointing out an old motto, so to speak, which I want to second now, is that we need to think globally, but act locally and regionally when we speak about digital sustainability, because although it is a global issue and there's there's cross-border inequalities that we're seeing here, and cross-border effects of our actions. Really need to meet people where they are and in their circumstances and from their different sectors and backgrounds. So maybe we can elaborate a bit more on that with our other speakers as well. Raphael, how do you reach people where they are in your work with Fridays for Future? What are some tried and true strategies on advocacy, environmental advocacy? And while you prepare your answer, I would also like our participants to share with us what has worked for them. In the Menti, I'm posting the link to the chat, and you should be able to see the questions. What are your strategies for sustainable advocacy? So let us know what works for you. And now over to you, Raphael.
Yes, so because we are working mostly towards, so we have like two groups we are trying to address. One, because we are a youth movement, we are trying to address young people to join us, to join our movement. But then we have a different group we are trying to address, which is basically all of society, in a way that we are saying climate change is here, it is happening, and we have to do something about it. Mostly we are addressing politicians. So those are two different groups we are addressing. The first group, young people, to instill hope in them and to instill the feeling of what Lily has said, which I think is very important, to give them that feeling that something can be done about it, because we are all just a movement of young people, and here we are. Most of the people know about us and what we are standing for. Come join us. This is really about what Lily also has said about positive communication, about hope, but also about this main thought of grassroots movement in general, which is that we don't need powerful people to join us. If we are a lot of young people and we don't have power each person for themselves, but if we are a large enough group, we can be powerful, we can go to the streets and we can demand changes. So this is the communication for young people. Now, if we are talking to politicians and we are meeting with politicians regarding specific regulations, then obviously we are communicating quite differently. We are not going to the politicians and saying, hey, climate change is happening, but we together can be hopeful and we can change it. But we go in there and tell them that they have the tools to change it. The science has said it for the last couple of decades, and we communicate with them in a more demanding way, because it is essentially what we are doing. We are demanding a future, we are demanding political action, and that is how we are talking to politicians differently than to those we want to get behind our movement.
Thank you. Those are, I think, also quite accessible ideas, right, for how to engage with different stakeholders differently. I would like to hear from you, Josephat and Edmond, alike, as you are both very much part of the internet governance spheres in your regions and globally. How do you see that working out in internet governance spheres? Do we need to maybe adapt certain strategies that were mentioned? Can we learn something from the idea of, if there's only enough of us advocating for a certain topic, maybe it doesn't matter so much who is in the group? Or do we really have to think this differently and maybe find ways to address different stakeholders in the internet governance sphere?
This is Edmund. I'll just jump in first. I guess just building on what Raphael was saying, I think this is something that needs a social movement. This is we're looking at transformation. We're not looking at service providers or content providers to wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to use clean energy, right? I mean, so the grassroots part is important for both politicians and governments, in my view, and especially sitting here in Hong Kong and at the at a different kind of a social movement, it's very important to get to the critical mass and allow people to be willing to voice out the concern. And the way I see it is that whether it's big corporations or governments, they're usually more conservative, and conservatives don't really see transformation that way. I mean, a way that I like to describe it is that a conservative can never see how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, because it's impossible to gradually turn. But what the movement helps, and that's why we need to talk about it here in youth, is that when the butterfly comes, it means that the critical mass is there supporting those ideas, and suddenly government or big businesses, they would see, oh, it was a butterfly all along. And that's where I think, you know, we need to build, we need to know that as much as we can talk to governments and big business, without the social and kind of a movement support, we'll never get it done. That's sort of my view.
Thank you, Edmund. Josephat, do you want to share as well?
Sure, yes. Thank you so much. I totally agree with Edmund also now that there is really need to be a bigger movement for different stakeholders to come on board and really engage on these issues, because for one, to really try and address these issues is that we need as many people with the same mindset and with the same passion to address these issues. There's also a high need stakeholders for public and private partnership, because, you know, this whole thing requires a different dialogue. It requires not only idea sharing, not only a movement of people moving up and down, but it also needs resources for this to be able to become effective and working out well. Another thing was that discussion like this and open dialogue, you know, to really talk realistically, physically, and also come up with tangible result, not only result on papers, but result that can be able to bring about change, is also one of the things that is needed. Lastly, what I wanted to touch on was that as countries, as continent and so forth, we have different treaties and different conventions and so forth that we've made agreement to. So we need to try and make sure that we hold our governments and our citizens and all these people engaged and to also be accountable. One of the biggest one, which we as Internet Society Namibian chapter has also made a submission to, is the current Universal Periodic Review, of which it's a United Nations mechanism where UN member states review other UN member states on different issues and human rights issues. And through the Internet Society, we came up with some of the recommendations on how Namibians should be held accountable, or how some of the issues that are not being addressed by Namibian government when it comes to human rights issues are being addressed at not just a national level or a continental level, but at a global level, where other UN member states can also be able to know, understand, and also see how they can put pressure and how they can be able to amplify to make sure that we have the needed outcome for the development of not just human being, but also sustainability. So yes.
Thank you, Josephat, and thank you to everyone. We are 2 minutes away from our end, so I would say we can wrap up now. I have also seen a few inputs to our Menti. This is still open, so if you want to formulate ideas and strategies on how you advocate for digital sustainability and environmental justice in the digital sphere, let us know, because this will go into our report and our follow-up work. Because the one thing I think that became very clear is that it needs more than just a few IGF sessions, and it also needs more than having an environment track once and then kind of fizzling out. But what we can really see is a momentum and a lot of interest from different stakeholders to come together and also get decision makers in on political level, the private sector, see where we have to be global and where we then have to transfer to more specific contexts. So I'm really happy that we got to have this discussion and this exchange. I hope we can follow up on that and also get those involved that have not been here in this room now, but who have maybe listened and are working in their respective contexts, because this is really what the multi-stakeholder approach is all about, that we address each other when it makes sense and when it is relevant. And I think digital sustainability should be a very relevant topic going forward for all of us. So thank you for joining. Thanks everyone who was listening in as a participant and also on the live stream. We will keep on working on this. And if you want to learn more about the Youth for Digital Sustainability program, you can find information online on yigf.de. With that, I would like to close right on time and wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are. Goodbye.